The CAM family started with a department store business and later grew powerfully into a commercial center. The previous generation had 4 children. The eldest sister held the reins for decades, never married and childless. Recently, she was diagnosed with stage 2 lung cancer. The group is currently managed by the second brother. But the third sister has long coveted the position of heir. She's frustrated because her own son, Mutt, is a useless bum who hasn't even graduated from college. There's also a stepson of their father, Cam, who quietly works as an assistant to the eldest sister. After preparing everything, the whole family gathered for a family photo. First, let's talk about the second brother's family. The eldest son is named Chan. He looks a lot like an actor, handsome and very stylish, and he's helping his dad straighten out the crooked business dealings in the group. A dishonest contractor skimped on materials and then had the nerve to lie about it. The second son, Talay, went straight to the construction site and smashed the substandard work with a sledgehammer. The steel was as thin as a toothpick. The contractor immediately got scared and started crying, claiming his underlings were at fault, but Chan replaced the contractor on the spot. The most rebellious is the third daughter, Dao. When the teacher wrote stupid on her best friend's head, she sprayed stupid on the teacher's car. The principal threatened to contact her parents, but Dao wasn't scared at all, telling him to go ahead, because it was actually her younger brother pretending to be her. Unexpectedly, the real mother showed up at the scene moments later, causing the online community to curse the third daughter and drag the whole family into the mud. Her mother taught her to study hard, that there are many ways to fight injustice and you can't use violence to solve violence. It seems her values are still very sound. Meanwhile, Talay is still inspecting at the construction site, completely unaware of the danger approaching as the fired contractor brought his gang to cause trouble. Suddenly, one of the gang members rushed in and shoved, causing the situation to spiral out of control, and in the scuffle, Talay accidentally caused injury. But unexpectedly that blow caused a big problem. Reporters flocked to the scene, and the contractor, like a thief crying "Stop thief," brought the young daughter of his underling, who wailed pathetically in front of the cameras, and because there was no surveillance camera, no evidence, public opinion completely leaned towards the weaker party. Bad news came from the hospital. The underling died, turning Talay from a rich young master into a suspect in a homicide. Out on bail, the whole family held a meeting. The eldest sister ordered the 2 younger brothers to cooperate with the police. Chan hurriedly spent money on compensation to silence the news, while the third sister, Dao, quickly handled the media crisis by issuing a statement that this was entirely a personal act, unrelated to the group. This time, the second sister-in-law completely exploded, because her son was clearly protecting the interests of the group, and now her family members were in a hurry to clear their names. The eldest sister coldly used the reason of the big picture as the most important thing to gloss over it, believing that tens of thousands of employees of the group could not be implicated, causing the second brother to angrily scold the eldest sister for being inhumane. But the third sister resolutely stood on the side of the eldest sister. In the midst of the adults arguing endlessly, Talay was emotionally downcast and said that if he was causing trouble for everyone, then they didn't need to help him anymore. This time, the eldest aunt exposed her nephew's flaws. She said Talay was very hot-tempered, and that's why his father sent him to a monastery to correct himself, but less than half a year after getting out, he's already causing trouble again. But he ignored everything, calmly declaring that he dared to do it and dared to take responsibility, and that he would let things proceed according to the law. Finally, the eldest sister made a ruthless decision, and the whole family agreed on one statement, declaring that this matter was unrelated to the family, causing Chan to completely collapse because he thought the family would be his strongest support, but as soon as something happened, he was immediately abandoned. Talay was also very heartbroken, while his father could only comfort his son and take it as a lesson and everything would pass. But the reality was too cruel when the contractor and the witnesses colluded to give false testimony, falsely accusing Talay of being the one who initiated the fight. That caused him to lose control of his emotions on the spot and yell that they were lying. Fortunately, the dashcam in the car recorded the entire course of events. At the same time, the group stock crashed due to the negative news, and revenue plummeted, forcing the eldest sister to once again take ruthless action for the benefit of the group. She ordered the third sister to immediately issue a statement, declaring a complete break in relations with the second brother's family. In the end, Talay was convicted and sentenced to 3 years and 4 months in prison, and was immediately led away in handcuffs. Time flew by, and 4 years later, the apartment project developed by the second brother's family was selling very well, and the smart home products researched by Chan were a sensation in the market. But when reporters asked where Talay had gone and why he never showed his face, and the third sister was equally curious, the second sister-in-law only glared and retorted that Chan alone could complete the task beyond expectations, and didn't need his younger brother's help. On the eldest sister's birthday, the third sister's son even invited a famous chef to cook, showing his ambition. When Chan wanted to bring his younger brother back to the company, the third sister tried everything to get her son into power, but the eldest sister let Talay decide for himself. At this time, Talay had been in the temple for half a year. So Chan went there to find him and asked the master to allow him to bring his younger brother home for 3 days. The 3 father and sons happily played soccer together, and Chan took the opportunity to suggest that his younger brother return to the company, saying that the eldest sister had also nodded in agreement and the whole family had forgiven him long ago, but the younger brother still didn't want to come back. Even so, the whole family teased and joked with each other happily. However, the next day, the mother, who was never sick, suddenly caught a cold, and before going on a business trip, the father and Chan teased her incessantly and took a picture as a souvenir, never expecting this to be their last group photo. Before boarding the plane, Chan called his younger brother, telling him to take good care of their mother because he and their father would be back tonight as soon as they signed the contract. But then the flight from Bangkok to Phuket became a tragedy when the pilot suddenly fainted, causing the plane to immediately lose control and crash while the 2 father and son were just virtually living at an altitude of 10,000 meters. Breaking news quickly reported that a small plane carrying the heir of the CAM group had crashed in Surat Thani province, and it was unclear if anyone had survived, causing the wife, Rin, and the second son, Talay, to rush to the scene of the accident. There, the bodies that were brought out were completely disfigured, and the wedding ring became the only item for identification. When the wife tremblingly tried to lift the white sheet, the rescue worker frantically stopped her because the scene was too horrible. At the funeral, while the eldest sister and the youngest aunt were still unable to accept the sudden passing of the second brother and grandson, and everyone was sobbing ironically, the youngest aunt's husband began to eye the CEO's seat, discussing with his wife to push their eldest son up at all costs. Suddenly, an archenemy arrived uninvited, making sarcastic remarks that the family's time was over with the grandchildren, one of whom had just gotten out of prison and the other a useless dropout, but fortunately, the stepdaughter, Cam, stood up to defuse the situation. At the same time, a friend came to visit and said that the plane crash may not have been an accident and that he would investigate thoroughly. In that chaotic atmosphere, the rumor that Talay, who had just been released from prison, might succeed to the CEO position caused employees in the company to secretly gossip. Ironically, all those rumors reached Talay's ears, while the guests were also whispering. Mutt, the eldest son of the youngest aunt's family, unexpectedly came forward to make trouble. He provoked, asking Talay if he thought he would become the boss because he lost his father. That remark caused Talay to immediately become furious, and in an instant the two lunged at each other on the spot. Soon after, others heard the noise and rushed over, and when the birth mother rushed to intervene, the result was that she was pushed away by Talay, causing the urn containing the ashes to fall to the ground and shatter. The whole hall immediately fell silent, and she collapsed to the ground crying in pain. After that, Talay felt that he had no face to stay at home, so he went to the temple again, not planning to return, not to escape, but just not wanting to cause more trouble for his mother and to be able to pray for the family. Unexpectedly, Rin came all the way to find him, wanting him to come back because he was the only heir to the group. But just as the two mother and son were arguing, a phone call made her change color and hurriedly leave, causing Talay to panic and call the secretary to ask if something earth-shattering had happened again. Indeed, the news was reporting loudly about the group scandal when 2 customers lost millions of dollars in an instant after shopping on the app, causing netizens to explode and question whether the security system was made of paper. It turned out that this system used to rely on the late second brother to regularly check for security vulnerabilities, so now there was no one to monitor it. But no one expected that Talay would find the hacker's nest, lead the police to catch the whole gang, and confirm that it was all customer data. Then he immediately called his mother, showing her how to make the mole reveal himself on the spot. This time, Talay made a great contribution to saving the group's reputation, and the assistant took the opportunity to suggest that he come back. However, the youngest aunt and her favorite son Mutt immediately objected, sarcastically saying that it was ridiculous to have someone with a criminal record as CEO, and joking that the group should be renamed Prison Turmoil to be worthy. After that, the eldest sister summoned the whole family to announce an important matter, causing Mutt, who was still confident that he would be the successor, to freeze when he got home and saw that the second sister-in-law and Talay were already there. The eldest sister said that her condition after 4 years of treatment had not improved, so the group could not continue like a snake without a head, and suggested that Talay join the group, but the youngest aunt and her son once again strongly objected, arguing that the group had severed ties and the board of directors would not approve it. To shut her up, the eldest sister decided to let the board of directors vote on who deserved to be CEO, and in a moment she suddenly remembered her deceased brother, who had begged her to give this impulsive son a chance, and this was also considered her fulfilling that promise, although it was a bit late. While the youngest aunt's family was anxious about the CEO seat, a mysterious phone call made her look serious and hurriedly leave. At the board of directors meeting, the shareholders argued fiercely. The largest shareholder expressed concern about Talay's past, while the second sister-in-law and the stepdaughter spoke up in support of him. Mutt scoffed, repeatedly saying harsh words that a madman who couldn't control his emotions was just waiting for the day to drag the group to the brink of bankruptcy. Finally, the eldest sister proposed a vote. The result was 4 votes in favor out of 8 people, and at the decisive moment the person who hated Talay the most, the youngest aunt, trembled and raised her hand in agreement, helping Talay qualify as CEO to the amazement of her husband and son. The reason for the youngest aunt's surprising yes vote, which made everyone think she was possessed, was quickly revealed. It turned out that before the meeting, the second sister-in-law had arranged to meet her on the rooftop, produced evidence that she was having an affair with a young pilot, and threatened that if she didn't vote for Talay, she would be completely disgraced, leaving the youngest aunt as pale as a ghost, and she had no choice but to grit her teeth and submit. Just like that, Talay officially took the CEO seat of the group. On his first day at work, his mother gave Talay the gift that his father and eldest brother had prepared before they passed away, a fountain pen engraved with the words, "We are always with you." Looking at the gift, Talay couldn't hold back his tears and vowed to make something of himself, bearing all the hopes of the entire family. The newly appointed boss immediately plunged into reviewing the reports of the past 4 years for 3 days and 3 nights without sleep, then proposed a breakthrough plan to continue his brother's wishes, building a green culinary area with a strong technological inspiration, creating a new virtual check-in point to attract customers. However, the competitor was not reconciled as Mutt, the son of the youngest aunt, also took action at the same time, throwing money to invite top stars to create momentum, plotting to use coverage to crush Talay. In the face of this situation, the eldest sister of the family decided to give the 2 of them 3 months to complete their plans, making Talay's CEO seat insecure. The stepdaughter, Cam, after analyzing, realized that both plans were very costly and risky. Talay's plan was grand but easily copied, while Mutt's strategy was strong but difficult to maintain for long, and she was also very surprised that someone who had just been in prison for 3 years like Talay had such forward-thinking ideas. Finally, the eldest sister assigned her to pay special attention to both of them, betting the future of the group on them. At the same time, the investigation into the plane crash had gruesome developments when the police brought the second sister-in-law to the airport and revealed that the plane had originally been changed at the last minute. The replacement plane had no black box, and even more strangely, the air traffic controller fainted on the spot after saying a few words, hiding a terrifying secret behind it all. On the other hand, the eldest sister, focused on praying for blessings, ran into her archenemy, who gloated about just signing a contract for the land she coveted, while sarcastically saying that she would copy her plan exactly and mocking that her family was declining, and that the CAM group would sooner or later be ruined in the hands of an unintelligent woman and a talented kid. However, even more terrifying news continued to pour in when the air traffic controller left a letter, and then ended his own life, raising questions about a connection to the plane crash. Meanwhile, Talay summoned the shop owners to a meeting about renovating the mall, but the requirement that each household pay out of their own pockets for repairs met with fierce opposition, forcing him to give 2 harsh choices: either sell goods outdoors in the square with pushcarts, or receive compensation and leave. Immediately afterwards, negative news dominated the top searches, and even some shop owners live-streamed selling carpets, accusing the group of not giving people a way to live, leading to massive protests in front of the mall. The family's enemy seized the opportunity to bribe reporters to spread negative news, and seeing the situation about to get out of control, the youngest aunt and son seized this God-given opportunity to demand Talay's dismissal. Only the eldest sister remained as calm as Mount Tai. She assigned Talay the task of facing and reassuring the crowd himself. When she heard the report about the strange death of the air traffic controller, she only coldly replied that she knew, an attitude so emotionless that the second sister-in-law couldn't help but be shocked. Only when she was alone in the room did the eldest sister quietly reopen a secret email that she had received long ago. In it was a chilling truth. The plane crash was not an accident, but a plan to wipe out the entire family. Meanwhile, Talay was still struggling to deal with the protesting crowd and was deemed too cowardly to quell them, until finally, the stepdaughter stepped forward, and just by revealing her identity and teary eyes, she easily resolved the situation. With a speech full of righteousness, the stepdaughter, who claimed to be the child of a concubine, moved people's hearts by declaring that she understood the pain of the poor and would promote a fair solution for everyone, causing the crowd to immediately cheer her as an angel, and she stole all the credit. The video spread rapidly online, causing the youngest aunt's family to explode with anger. But the most devastated was still Mutt, who now not only had to compete for the inheritance with Talay, but also had to deal with a rising drama queen. Too upset that the group had become a mess, Talay hid in his eldest brother's room to reminisce and accidentally discovered his brother's tablet, where he found a video recorded just before the plane crashed. In the video, the co-pilot frantically called for help, but air traffic control did not respond, proving that this was not an accident, and he immediately handed this evidence over to his uncle for investigation. After adjusting his mood, Talay continued his work, leading the shop owners to visit the outdoor area renovation plan with cooling equipment and maximum entertainment items to ensure business, while also learning about Dika's uncle's circumstances. At this time, the second sister-in-law also woke up, realizing that the departure of her husband and eldest son had too many suspicious points, and that someone wanted their family to be extinct in order to monopolize the inheritance. To consolidate her son's position as CEO, she decided to take action, targeting Dika's uncle, who had live-streamed defaming the group, with a plan to sponsor all treatment costs for her paralyzed cousin in Talay's name. However, when she arrived, she was shocked by the scene of the entire neighborhood hanging banners of protest and was chased out of the door by Dika's uncle himself. While the secretary went to the store to buy water, she called Talay to inform him of the situation. She said that Rin and she had gone to Dika's uncle's house but were chased away like ghosts. As for Dika, through a sister, she had sent a message trying to find out that her uncle was live streaming. On Rin's side, while she was at the shrine, she noticed something was wrong when she smelled a strong odor of gasoline and caught someone secretly lighting a fire. Although she clumsily extinguished a small flame, the fire spread everywhere, and when she was about to scream, she came face to face with the perpetrator. After Talay learned that his mother had secretly gone to Dika's uncle's house, it was too late when a large fire flared up fiercely, and he could not contact his mother. The fire broke out from Dika's house itself, causing her and Talay to risk their lives running against the tide of people fleeing. Talay defied the danger, rushed into the thick smoke, pulled the entire Dika family out, and even carried the patient on his shoulders when the wheelchair broke, scoring absolute points in everyone's eyes. Just after bringing them to safety, he remembered that his mother was lost in the slum, and while the fire truck was blocked by a mysterious cement mixer, he once again rushed back into the fire, finally saving his mother. After escaping, the second sister-in-law confirmed that she had seen the perpetrator, and a series of strange events that followed made her even more suspicious. The aid truck of the rival company was present immediately. The media quickly reported on Talay's heroic actions, and Dika's aunt immediately apologized. She realized that the series of 3 events, fire, blockade, and media relief, could not be a coincidence, and was determined to investigate whether the archenemy was really behind the plane crash. Amidst the most intense inheritance war in Thai history, Talay, after risking his life to save people, received praise from the online community, making the group's image positive. Seeing his spotlight stolen, Mutt couldn't sit still, deciding to throw a lavish party with the world's top bartender to crush the competition with media coverage. Rebuked by his mother for still being in the mood to party, he gave an evil smile, revealing his new tactic of striking at the enemy's psychology, targeting Dao, Talay's younger sister, and sending her a message inviting her to the party. However, Dao wasn't just being eyed by Mutt. The family's dedicated fortune teller, Ki, grabbed her to smell the scent to choose good fortune, stuffing a bottle of lucky perfume into her hand, and when Mutt texted to urge her again, he drew a tarot card and warned her that someone was setting a trap, and she absolutely shouldn't go. Despite the warning, Dao still decided to go to the lavish party, where Mutt subtly signaled the bartender to offer a dreamy cocktail. Being sweet-talked, she kept drinking glass after glass of the sweet liquor that could directly affect the brain, getting so drunk that she didn't know where she was. While in the distance, the stepdaughter of the family, Cam, was coldly observing everything. Meanwhile, Rin, completely unaware that her daughter was about to cause trouble, went to the air traffic controller's house to continue the investigation and discovered that before committing suicide, he had received a huge sum of money mysteriously, and when she found her eldest son's autobiography magazine in a box, she immediately believed that the plane crash was definitely not an accident. The police also confirmed these suspicious points, when the record showed that the pilot had not sent a distress signal before crashing. Back at the party, the fourth youngest brother, Ta Khan, was browsing social media, and was horrified to see a video of Dao being surrounded by a group of young men with dreamy eyes. So he hurriedly reported it to Talay. Furious because he thought his sister had been drugged, Talay rushed to the party just as the fortune teller Key also appeared and was trying to pull Dao away, but she struggled and resisted. Mutt came out to stop him, and when Talay arrived, seeing his sister disoriented, he became enraged and started fighting with Mutt. At that moment, Dao suddenly fainted, completely unconscious. After being taken to the emergency room, Talay and his mother were both convinced that she had been drugged, but the youngest aunt's family struck first, running to complain to the eldest sister that Talay had assaulted someone without cause. When the test results confirmed that Dao's blood contained prohibited substances, the second sister-in-law immediately presented evidence of the white powder residue found under the party table. Before Mutt's vehement denial, the stepdaughter, Cam, who had been silent for so long, suddenly spoke. With a sarcastic tone, she suggested that if it wasn't Mutt who did it, then it must be his friend, because birds of a feather flock together. That statement made the youngest aunt seethe with anger. Before that chaos, the eldest sister finally asserted herself, declaring that Mutt was no longer allowed to host any parties, All projects he was in charge of had to be handed over to the stepdaughter, and he was suspended from work for a month to reflect, causing him to turn pale with anger, and he could only angrily leave. Meanwhile, in the hospital room, Dao finally woke up, and the fortune teller Qi had been tending to her day and night, even giving and personally putting on her a bracelet that had been consecrated to regulate the magnetic field of her health, raising questions as to whether this excessive kindness was a plan to marry into a wealthy family. At the same time, the youngest aunt's family was in complete turmoil when the husband went crazy, pointing his finger and scolding her for causing his son to lose the CEO seat because of her about-face at the shareholder meeting, and their argument almost led to violence. This tension affected the youngest son and Da, causing him to lose focus and show signs of depression on the tennis court. Sure enough, to release her emotions, the youngest aunt went to an apartment, and the person who opened the door was none other than her son's former tennis coach. The battle for the inheritance completely erupted, as Mutt, even though suspended from work, was dating a famous online influencer, while Talay devoted all his heart to building the food district. Right during the grand opening ceremony, a group of people suddenly rushed into a brawl for no apparent reason, causing the guests to panic and run away in disarray, and the business was considered a failure from day one. Although Talay quickly increased security and issued discount coupons to salvage the situation, the food district remained deserted for 5 consecutive days. Finally, he had to hear the youngest aunt say sarcastically that he was truly a useless person. On the internet, the food district suddenly became famous, but it turned out that it was all arranged by Mutt when he had his influencer girlfriend livestream, proving that the place was extremely safe and delicious, causing fans to flock there and save the food district that seemed to have no hope. In the family party afterward, the third aunt's family had the opportunity to put on a good show, while Talay's achievements were snatched away, causing the second brother's family to turn pale. At the same time, Dao, Talay's sister, was also ignored by the eldest aunt when she proposed a startup plan, causing her to angrily throw away the bracelet that the fortune teller Qi had given her. In that very moment, Qi reappeared incredibly, picked up the bracelet and comforted Dao, saying that he saw all her efforts and could help her succeed through a mysterious alliance without asking for family money. However, when interrupted by Enda, the fortune teller immediately changed his attitude, putting on his headphones with a gloomy face, and through a listening device hidden in the bracelet, he listened to the entire conversation between the two. Continuing his brainwashing plan, he invited Dao to do charity work, recounting his bitter past and frantically implying that as long as she joined the alliance, she would become the strongest person in the family, causing Dao's eyes to gradually become dreamy, clearly convinced. Not long after, she secretly took a photo of her mother's ID after being caught red-handed in the room by her younger brother Ta Khan. Meanwhile, the secretary investigated and found out that the nanny car used to bribe the troublemakers belonged to the youngest aunt's family. Having guessed that the youngest aunt was playing tricks, the second sister-in-law decided to give her a painful blow by deliberately inviting her to a luxury room. The youngest aunt thought something good was going to happen, but as soon as she stepped into the door, she saw her young boyfriend also there and realized that she had been set up. When she tried to run, the door was locked from the outside, and at that moment the second sister-in-law called. Cornered in the room with her young boyfriend, the youngest aunt finally broke down before the second sister-in-law's threat that her husband would arrive at the scene in 2 minutes. After receiving the photo evidence, the youngest aunt had to admit that she had hired people to cause trouble and begged for forgiveness. Having achieved her goal of intimidation, the second sister-in-law appeared at the last moment and led people away, leaving the youngest aunt collapsing to the ground in humiliation. In another development, after hearing his mother tell the story of the youngest aunt playing tricks, Talay was completely unable to bear it anymore and went straight to confront Mutt. Declaring that he would not tolerate dirty tricks, Talay, who had no intention of competing for power, had completely awakened and affirmed that from now on he would definitely seize the CEO position so that the group would not fall into the hands of a petty person. At this time, Dao was not idle either when she secretly forged her mother's signature and printed out the IDs of the whole family, then brought a thick stack of documents to Qi's company. Here, she was convinced to gather enough people, including the maid and driver, to join the alliance as a group with the promise of mutual aid funds and huge sums of money to open hundreds of stores. And then, the real conspiracy was revealed through a phone call, when Qi reported back to a mysterious person. The plan was to use the family's IDs to create accounts on online betting sites, in order to ruin their reputation and make no one dare to let them manage the group anymore. In the midst of Mutt's meeting, Talay suddenly barged in, breaking the serious atmosphere. Without a word of explanation, he signaled all the employees to leave, returning the private space to the two people. Without needing to be verbose, Talay threw a sharp declaration of war straight at Mutt's face, that he wasn't afraid of losing, only afraid of having to lose to a scoundrel. The provocative words immediately ignited Mutt's rage. The war of words quickly turned into a fierce scuffle, and it was all witnessed by Mutt's girlfriend, Nolly, through the security camera, Talay completely gained the upper hand, grabbing Mutt tightly while affirming confidently that the leadership seat of CAM would definitely belong to him. He pushed Mutt away contemptuously and turned to leave, leaving Mutt wallowing in resentment and humiliation. Meanwhile, in another development, Dao was recklessly embarking on a dangerous path by forging documents. She not only stole her mother's information but also dragged the entire family, including the maid Dai, into a mess. When arriving at Key's office, Dao happened to encounter a celebrity sitting for a fortune-telling session before she had the chance to hand over the file. With sweet words and an implied head pat, Key easily accepted the file containing the personal information of Dao's entire family, instructing her to just listen to him obediently. However, behind that kind appearance was a sinister plan. Key was plotting to use this very information to set a trap, blocking Talay's path to the CEO position. At a lavish party, the second aunt and Cam accidentally bumped into the two father and son Durut. Not missing the opportunity, Durut continuously made sarcastic and taunting remarks, making the atmosphere as tense as a taut string. In contrast to that animosity, the second aunt only smiled calmly, politely presented gifts, and gently announced that the railway line of the project had been changed and no longer went through Amon's land. This news was like a heavy blow that made the Durut father and son turn pale, stunned. The second aunt said a few more sarcastic remarks and then left leisurely, leaving the two father and son standing silently in the crowd. In another corner of the party, Thap, Durut's son, was making coffee to soothe his tense mind when Cam stepped forward to start a conversation. Simple, everyday stories drew them closer together, creating a moment of relaxation and joy. At this time, the second aunt happened to pass by. She was slightly surprised by this unexpected closeness and then found Cam to ask clearly. Their conversation was interrupted when Durut on the podium suddenly mentioned CAM, solemnly declaring that what was once a source of inspiration would now become a direct competitor. As for Rin, after receiving news from her younger brother that the fire had been concluded by the police as an accident, she still could not be at ease. Her intuition told her that something was wrong, so she continued to press for details about the plane crash, especially when the video she had showed many shady points related to the two pilots. Just then her phone rang. On the other end of the line, the second aunt said decisively that if Rin wanted to know who the real perpetrator was, she had to come meet her directly. As for Talay, although busy with work, he still took the time to stop by Dika's shop. Tong, the employee there, seemed to understand, smiled and greeted him a few words and then quickly called Dika. However, Dika was caught up in a heated argument with her aunt, so she hung up the phone. She questioned her aunt about throwing away her son, Pong's medicine, making the family atmosphere stuffy. The argument reached its climax when Dika had to witness the cruelty of a mother who was torturing her own child, causing Pong lying next to him to only painfully shed tears. In a fit of anger, the aunt dragged out her belongings, scolding and chasing Dika out of the house. In another place, when Talay returned to the office, he unexpectedly ran into Nolly. After a few polite greetings, he was about to leave when Nolly and her crew suddenly appeared with the reason of filming content dancing everywhere. She intentionally jumped into Talay's frame and insisted on asking for his Instagram. Just as Talay was entering the information, Mutt rushed out of nowhere, angrily pulling Nolly out. Not missing the opportunity to provoke his opponent, Talay chased after and intentionally said loudly, promising Nolly that next time they would livestream together. The conflict between the two flared up again. Nolly quickly pulled Mutt into a private room to calm him down, but Mutt only coldly warned her not to get involved with Talay anymore and then left. In response to the warning, Nolly only smiled to herself and then quietly texted to arrange a meeting with Talay. In his office, Durut and his son, Thap, were discussing work when they received a video sent by a spy. It was a hidden camera footage from Talay's side. After watching it, he laughed gleefully and then ordered Thap to immediately investigate information about Nolly. Although Thap expressed disagreement, he was scolded by his father and had to reluctantly obey. Meanwhile, at the second aunt's house, the family gathering became extremely tense during a Jenga game. Just because of a small disagreement, the tower collapsed like the cracks in their own relationship. The two sides immediately began to exchange words, mocking and criticizing each other. The second aunt had to seriously declare that if this argument continued, she would hand over the leadership position to an outsider. The warning immediately took effect. Talay and Mutt hurriedly bowed their heads and apologized. The second aunt gently explained the difficult situation of the company when it was being sabotaged by the opponent, and then announced that at the upcoming anniversary celebration, she would officially announce the successor. The eyes of Talay and Mutt met. The atmosphere in the room became heavy, full of pressure. The meal ended. The second aunt called Rin out to talk privately, an action that made the youngest aunt suspicious and extremely curious. She turned to ask Cam but did not receive an answer. Meanwhile, Takhan invited Talay and Dao to hang out, but both refused. Takhan cleverly guessed that Dao had a date with Key, a statement that hit the nail on the head and made Dao flinch slightly. In a private room, after reviewing the video together, the second aunt gave the opinion that the two pilots may have been poisoned and pointed out more suspicious details. At this moment, the youngest aunt unexpectedly walked in, questioning them directly, making the atmosphere tense immediately. Rin responded with a sarcastic tone, seeing the situation was not good. The second aunt spoke up to advise both of them not to act beyond the limits. Rin agreed to leave. The youngest aunt intended to follow, but was called back by the second aunt with a stern, powerful look. Meanwhile, Talay went to Dika's stall to ask about her, but only received coldness and ignorance. Dika said irritably that he should not interfere in her affairs and then left, but Talay hurriedly chased after and stopped her. Unable to hold back anymore, Dika burst into sobs, admitting that she was completely stuck. Talay gently advised her to let Pong be treated, and let her aunt be responsible for what she had done. He believed that she was strong enough to overcome it. Talay hugged Dika to comfort her, unaware that this intimate moment had been recorded by an employee and sent directly to the youngest aunt. In the midst of being busy with work, Rin paused when she received a message inviting her to meet from the youngest aunt. Attached was a series of sneaky photos of Talay, clearly a provocation. On the windy rooftop, the youngest aunt started the story with the ambiguous relationship between Talay and Dika, hinting that she was having people investigate the gambling addiction past of the girl's aunt, not forgetting to say sarcastically that Dika was a perfect match for Talay. The meeting quickly turned into a negotiation, where secrets were exchanged and phones were swapped to erase traces. As soon as she left, Rin immediately called Talay over, threw the photos on the table and questioned him. She made it clear that the youngest aunt was the one behind it, and she also knew the truth about Dika's aunt. Talay insisted that Dika was completely innocent, and was even trying to stop her aunt. But Rin was adamant, she didn't want her son to get involved in this mess anymore. Talay flatly refused. He was determined to prove Dika was a good person. He deeply sympathized with her because now Dika also had to bear the name of a scammer, and he himself longed to prove his worth. Hearing those heartfelt words, Dom, her assistant, quietly nodded in agreement. As for Dika, at Pong's bedside, she choked with emotion, pouring out her heart. She didn't know how to stop her aunt anymore. Pong only silently shed tears. He had known everything for a long time. At that moment, Talay came to find her but was blocked by her aunt right in front of the door, loudly chasing him away. When Dika tried to clean up the pile of illegal stuff, she also snatched it back. But Talay wasn't easy to give up. He stood right in front of the door, exposing her true face, that she was slandering on the internet day and night. Ashamed into anger, she hurriedly pulled Dika into the house, slamming the curtains shut as if to hide her sins. Sitting in the car, Talay called Dika. Hearing his voice, she couldn't hold back her sadness and feeling of injustice when she learned the truth. He gently advised her to be brave, to do the right thing, and promised to wait for her in front of the house. A moment later, Dika came out, her face distraught, her eyes lifeless as if she had lost everything. Talay said nothing, only gently approached and took her hand. Just waiting for that, all emotions burst. She leaned into his arms and burst into sobs. In that moment, all words became meaningless. Talay just quietly hugged her, a hug in place of 1,000 words of comfort. In another development, the police caught the person who drugged Dao. He confessed that this act stemmed from personal hatred, a confession that indirectly exonerated Mutt. However, Rin had an uneasy feeling that everything seemed to be arranged too perfectly. The second aunt also shared the same thought. She decided to have people investigate further to see if the perpetrator had any connection with Darut. Meanwhile, the youngest aunt was busy cultivating her son, and Da's future by arranging a tennis match with Phi. The match was cancelled midway, causing Nda to angrily go home. However, immediately after, the two secretly texted to care for each other, making the youngest aunt unable to hide her satisfied smile. As soon as he got home, Nda met Takan, who invited him to hang out, and immediately agreed. Before leaving, he did not forget to report back to his mother, and also suggested asking Phi to stay for a meal with her, a suggestion that made the youngest aunt slightly embarrassed. But when she heard her son mention that they would go to a quiet place, she smiled meaningfully. As for Dao, she had just arrived at the company and hurriedly reported to Ki that the perpetrator had been caught. At that moment, Nda and Takan unexpectedly appeared, making her startled and flustered. Takan immediately became suspicious, pressing to ask what Dao was hiding. Ki skillfully calmed the situation, and then had someone lead the two boys on a tour to distract them. As soon as they left, Ki received a mysterious call, and through that conversation the truth was finally revealed. He was the mastermind behind it all. Meanwhile, Mutt led Nali into a private room. The atmosphere between the two became more intimate than ever. While Mutt was not paying attention, Nali secretly texted to arrange a meeting with Talay, but that action did not escape his eyes. Her anger flared up. Mutt snatched the phone and pushed Nolly sprawling to the floor, issuing a stern warning before storming off. As soon as the door slammed shut, Nolly's face changed completely. The pitiful look disappeared, replaced by coldness and calculation. She called to Rut directly, demanding more rights in exchange for long-term cooperation. That night, at a secret location, Thap secretly arrived at the meeting point. The person waiting for him was none other than Cam. It turned out that amidst the storm of schemes and hatred, they were still secretly nurturing their love. They hugged each other tightly, exchanging sweet words of love. Cam whispered about a day when the two companies would cooperate, and Thap gently nodded, promising to make that dream a reality. In that moment, they temporarily forgot all calculations, leaving only pure love. The next morning, news about the scamming aunt exploded across the newspapers, and the person who stood up to accuse her was Ka. The image of the aunt's familiar house appeared on television, causing Rin to be stunned and emotional. Meanwhile, at the shop, Ka was criticized and cursed by the angry crowd and netizens who flocked there, creating a chaotic scene. At the critical moment, Talay appeared like a savior, but the crowd still kept booing even though the police had intervened. He pulled Ka into a private room, trying to help her regain her composure. Initially, Ka resisted. She didn't want to receive help from him, but before the sincere advice, she gradually softened. Talay hugged her to comfort her, and just at that moment, Rin walked in, witnessing everything. Her eyes flashed a complex look, but then she implicitly understood and called Talay into the room to talk privately. Facing his mother, Talay admitted that he was the one who advised Ka to stand up to accuse her aunt. Rin was worried that this would seriously affect Siam's reputation, but Talay asserted that this was only a small matter and would not implicate the company. Disagreeing, Rin recalled the old story with a disappointed look and then turned to leave. Talay hurriedly grabbed his mother's hand, hoping she would calm down. She could only sigh helplessly before her son's persistence, telling him to be very careful before leaving. At the shareholder meeting, the atmosphere was as tense as a string. The youngest aunt bluntly proposed removing Ka's shop from the system, not forgetting to emphasize the scandals of her aunt again. Talay immediately stood up to object, arguing that it was an unfair decision. Mutt didn't miss the opportunity either, speaking sarcastically, igniting a fierce argument between the two. Suddenly, a senior shareholder raised a photo of Talay hugging Ka, causing the entire meeting room to be stunned. Rin and the youngest aunt were no exception. Taking advantage of the opportunity, he began to criticize Talay, while also taunting Mutt as someone who had not had any outstanding achievements. Finally, he concluded that there were many more talented people, implying that he didn't mind if the leader was a woman, and then directed his meaningful gaze towards Cam, making her the center of everyone's attention. Just out of the meeting room, the youngest aunt received a call questioning her from Rin. She insisted that she didn't know who had leaked the photo to that shareholder. Hearing Rin threatening to have someone recover the phone data, the youngest aunt was slightly flustered. Immediately, she sought out Phi for help, but to no avail. She believed that someone was deliberately setting a trap, wanting to put all the blame on her. Phi also agreed that that person not only wanted to harm her, but also aimed straight at Talay. He tried to reassure her, but the youngest aunt seemed to no longer hear anything. Arriving home, Mutt showed his mother the video recording of Nolly bruised on her arm. After watching it, she advised her son to stay home, avoid seeing Nolly at this time so as not to make things worse. After thinking for a while, she suggested that Mutt send flowers to apologize first, and then wait for the right time to meet her together later. Under the tree waiting for the bus, Ka sat quietly, her face heavy with worry. Over the phone, she poured out her heart that she still couldn't meet her aunt. Suddenly, a familiar warm voice rang out from the other end of the line, gently laughing and telling her to look up. From the window of the office above, Talay was there, his eyes gently watching her. Without hesitation, he offered to invite her to the monastery to do good deeds, seeking some peace. The sudden offer made Ka stunned for a moment, then a relieved smile bloomed on her lips. A few short conversations were enough to dispel the gloomy atmosphere, replaced by a warm, peaceful feeling. As night fell, Dao had just stepped home when she saw her mother waiting. Just as Ta Khan and Talay also returned, Rin happily called everyone over, gathered together by the pot of steaming night porridge. Amidst the warm family atmosphere, old stories were told, interspersed with the mother's gentle reminders about the principles of being human. Talay sat quietly, attentively listening to every word, and that moment made Rin unable to hide her happy, satisfied smile. Meanwhile, Ta Khan was engrossed in a game when Dao sneaked into the room. She earnestly asked her younger brother to keep her work a secret, promising that when she succeeded, she would announce everything herself. Ta Khan readily agreed. The two siblings hooked their fingers as a vow, but they didn't know that every word, every sentence in that conversation had been recorded by Key's listening device without missing a sound. Immediately, he texted Dao, still the sweet words of concern, skillfully leading and manipulating her psychology, Dao, with her naivety and absolute trust, was completely unaware that she was a puppet in someone else's hands. Behind the screen, Qi smiled triumphantly, insidiously. The day of the appointment to the monastery finally arrived. Talay took Dika along to do good deeds. While he was standing waiting from afar, Nali unexpectedly raised her phone to take a selfie, deliberately arranging the angle so that Talay's figure would fall into the back of the frame. As for Mutt, he was like sitting on pins and needles because he couldn't contact Nali. He texted incessantly but only received silence in return. His intuition told him something was wrong. Mutt hurriedly opened her personal page to see. The photo with the presence of Talay hit his eyes like a blow. He frantically called, but the other end of the line just connected and then quickly hung up. At the monastery, Talay and Dika were cleaning and sharing bread with the children along with the monks. Just then Nali appeared, approaching Talay and feigning that she felt too stressed and wanted to come here to find peace. As soon as she finished speaking, Mutt rushed out of nowhere, snatched Nali's hand and growled, accusing her of abandoning him to go on a secret date with Talay. The tug-of-war between Mutt and Nali quickly turned into a brawl between the two brothers when Talay intervened. Without a second of hesitation, Dika decisively grabbed a bucket of water and splashed it directly on the two of them, promptly extinguishing the fight. The group was unaware that the entire scene had been completely recorded from afar by a hidden person. The very next day, news and videos about the CAM brothers' fight flooded social media. From the youngest aunt's family, Rin, to the second aunt, all were stunned when they saw those clips. While the curious public discussed in another place, Durut was laughing gleefully. He immediately called the person who had live-streamed, promising to reward them handsomely once the plan to seize CAM succeeded. Soon after, he contacted Nali, asking her to dig up more information about the rift between Talay and Mutt, in return for expensive branded items. This time, the second aunt immediately summoned both Mutt and Talay to clarify everything. After a round of questioning, she came to the conclusion that Nali had deliberately appeared to sow discord, with the ultimate goal of undermining CAM internally. When they came out, Mutt and his mother were still skeptical. They called their father and argued that Nali had no reason to harm their family. However, on the other end of the line, the father quietly picked up the phone, asking someone to start investigating. In a private conversation, the second aunt and Rin pieced together all the recent events. All clues pointed in one direction. That old man Durut was the one pulling the strings behind the scenes, planning to harm the entire CAM family. That night, Mutt's entire family cornered Nali into the youngest aunt's room to question her, forcing her to reveal the mastermind behind everything. However, even when cornered, Nali resolutely denied it. Losing patience, the youngest aunt splashed the water directly in her face and coldly told her not to teach her a lesson. Seeing that nothing was progressing, the father stepped up, using his power to force Nali to tell the truth. But she still gritted her teeth and remained silent. Finally, they had to let her leave. By this time, even Mutt no longer believed in Nali's innocence. He was convinced that she was hiding a huge secret. Immediately, Mutt's father had people secretly follow her. The next morning, Nali met Durut and bluntly declared that she didn't want to be involved with the CAM family anymore. He just sneered, telling her not to worry and to let him handle everything. Saying that, he took out his phone, showing her a video recording of the youngest aunt being intimate with her lover. That recording became a tool for blackmail, forcing Nali to continue to follow the plan. His voice was icy when he uttered the threat. If you've climbed on the back of a tiger, you have to keep going, and if you want to get off halfway, you'll only end up being eaten. Too scared, Nali had no choice but to nod in agreement. At the same time, another storm was brewing at the youngest aunt's house. The husband was already waiting there, throwing down in front of his wife irrefutable evidence, a clip recording her being intimate with the tennis coach Phi. Immediately after, the subordinates dragged Phi into the house. The husband's accusations were as sharp as knives, piercing straight into the youngest aunt's heart that she had brazenly used her son as a cover to date her lover. The confrontation quickly escalated into a violent conflict. While struggling, Phi frantically begged, but the husband coldly reached for the tennis racket. He only swung a few light strokes, as a deliberate act of humiliation, but that was enough to make the youngest aunt scream in pain for her lover. That pity seemed to make the husband even more smug. He issued a cold warning, saying that he didn't want to see this scene again, and then signaled for people to drag Phi out. Suffocated and humiliated, the youngest aunt rushed into the room, yanked open the drawer and pulled out the secret phone. She intended to turn on the phone, but a moment of hesitation made her hand freeze. Finally, she placed it back in its original position. But just then, Rin's threat rang in her mind, the icy words that she would recover all the data in the phone, no matter what she was hiding. That memory was like a spark that ignited the smoldering ashes, igniting the anger that was lurking in her heart. Dawn had just broken. Cam was engrossed in her easel with her elderly uncle. He stood beside her, quietly observing her soft brushstrokes, then intermixed with surprise and regret, wondering why the second aunt didn't recognize that innate talent. Cam only responded with a modest smile, saying that she still had a lot to learn. That peaceful atmosphere was quickly interrupted when the lawyer appeared. Without any hesitation, the uncle immediately announced his intention to leave all his assets to Cam alone. Too surprised by those words, Cam dropped her brush, hurriedly stood up, affirming that she only took care of him because she was following the instructions of the second aunt. However, the uncle remained steadfast. He said that it was her sincerity and kindness that made him believe that Cam deserved to receive those assets. When Cam returned, the second aunt immediately interrogated her about where she had been all day. Soon after, she gave her a secret mission, to investigate Thap, Durut's son. The second aunt affirmed that Durut was the one who had harmed the Cam family, and now it was time for them to retaliate. When Cam wondered why her, the second aunt only responded sharply that, other than Cam, no one could complete this mission. As night fell, the atmosphere in the family became even more tense. Rin suspected that there was an informant within the leadership ranks who was leaking information to Durut. She was even worried that the uncle that Cam was caring for could also suddenly turn against them. The discussion came to a terrifying conclusion, that anyone among the 5 people of the company could be the traitor. Carrying that suspicion, Talay sought out Dao, wanting to talk privately, but his attitude was full of discomfort. Afterward, he found Takan, secretly asking him to find out what Dao was doing and who she was close to, because he had a feeling that someone was secretly setting a trap to harm Cam. The next morning, the youngest aunt went downstairs, catching Nda having breakfast alone. She wanted to start a conversation with her son, but he coldly left. Just as Mutt came down from upstairs, she tried to start a conversation again, but he didn't even bother to listen to his mother say a word. This moment her phone rang. It was Rin asking to meet at the golf course. Just arriving without a word of warning, a shocking slap from the youngest aunt landed on Rin's cheek. The youngest aunt screamed, arguing that it was Rin who released the clip, causing her life to fall into a dead end. Rin calmly explained that the second aunt was suspecting that someone in the house was colluding with Durut, and advised the youngest aunt to keep an eye on her husband, on Fa Sin. She repeated the second aunt's words, that if Fa Sin really cooperated with Durut, with power and money he would stand above everyone else. Not believing her ears, the youngest aunt angrily left. Immediately after, she called Phi, decisively demanding that he never contact her again. Just as Nda walked in, Phi hurriedly hung up and told Nda that things had gone too far. It was time to stop. At the same time, when discovering the identity of the person sitting in the car with Fa Sin, the 2 Rin mother and son immediately suspected that Cam was Durut's mole. As for the youngest aunt, as soon as she got home and saw Nali, jealousy and anger flared up. She rushed straight into the room, berating Mr. Fa Sin for colluding with Durut, causing him to be stunned. A fiery argument broke out, and through his wife's accusations, Mr. Fa Sin gradually understood the truth. He ordered people to forcibly take the youngest aunt home first, while he stayed behind to deal with Nali. With a frighteningly cold attitude, he and Mutt exposed Nali's dirty past. A person who specializes in exploiting men to live in a facade of artificial luxury. Nali trembled, begging for forgiveness. Without a trace of mercy, Mutt snatched the phone, calling Durut directly. The familiar voice of Durut rang out from the other end of the line, which was irrefutable evidence. Nali was immediately subdued, drugged and taken away in the silence of the night, heading towards the deep forest on a strange car, most likely being taken across the Cambodian border. Meanwhile, Nda was sinking into a mess of chaotic emotions, sitting in front of the game screen with his mind wandering elsewhere. The continuous calls and messages from Takan were all ignored by him. Seeing that, the game friend on the other end of the line invited him to go play paintball to relieve stress. Arriving at the place, Nda was stunned when he recognized that the person was Ki. With skill, Ki quickly grasped his psychology and led Nda into the game. His thoughtfulness and friendliness made Nda feel a rare concern that he had always lacked for the first time. That day, Cam changed her usual jogging location. Rin and her assistant secretly followed from a distance, sure that Thap would also appear. Sure enough, Cam skillfully picked up the earphones she had prepared and ran right behind Thap, the two immersed in a melody, her face shining with radiant happiness. 3 laps passed without anything unusual, causing the assistant to begin to doubt his judgment. But it was the small unusual details that made Rin decide to wait patiently. Sure enough, Cam came to a secluded culvert as agreed. There, she and Thap secretly exchanged intimate, affectionate gestures. But happiness was short-lived. As soon as they left, they unexpectedly ran into the 3 Rin mother and son who had been waiting. Cam quickly signaled Thap to leave first, while she calmly faced the anger before her. She tried to explain, but Rin only coldly questioned her, affirming that she was the mole behind everything. Cam knelt down, choking in tears, admitting that she and Thap loved each other but she had never betrayed the family. She painfully expressed the conflict between love and loyalty, firmly asserting that Thap was a good person. The second aunt angrily demanded that the two break up immediately. In a moment of utter despair, Cam shouted the shocking secret that the real mole in CM was Mr. Fa Sin. He had colluded with Durut. The statement was like a thunderbolt hitting Rin and the second aunt, while Talay was happily arranging a new house for Dika. The two were shocked to hear the news that Nali had disappeared on television. He rushed back home, where the police were taking statements from the youngest aunt's family. Everyone, including the bodyguards, had solid alibis. That evening, the whole family gathered at the second aunt's house. Mud affirmed his innocence. Mr. Fa Sin, when suspected of colluding with Durut, loudly denied it. Cam then released evidence of his company's losses, causing him to go crazy but still tried to deny the crime. Losing all reason, Mr. Fa Sin rushed to attack Cam despite everyone's attempts to stop him. The strong push caused her to fall into the glass table, fragments piercing her full of blood. The second aunt's anger reached its peak. She roared, throwing Mr. Fa Sin out of the house. After taking Cam to the emergency room, Rin immediately sought out the second aunt. In the quiet room, the second aunt calmly revealed a terrible truth that everything all along had been in her arrangement. Punishing Mr. Fa Sin was just a drama, a strategy to deceive everyone. She said that from the day Cam appeared and claimed to be her husband's daughter, she had never trusted her for a second. It turned out that the real mole, Durut's most dangerous pawn, was Cam. From Talay's incident, supporting him to become CEO, to the conflicts between Rin and the youngest aunt, or the conflict between Mutt and Talay, all were chess moves meticulously directed by Cam. All the troubles surrounded others, only she was always safe and sound. Hearing this, Rin was stunned. She slowly pieced together the whole incident and was horrified to realize what she had missed. But the second aunt was not in a hurry to take action. She wanted to see how far that dangerous pawn could perform. Having just set foot back in the company after days of recuperation, Cam was stunned to see that her desk had been moved to another corner. Without a second of hesitation, she went straight to the second aunt's office to confront her. Responding to her anger, the second aunt only calmly replied that it was a forced decision because of the shady relationship between her and Thap. The atmosphere in the room thickened, as tense as a taut string. The eyes like thousands of daggers that flashed in Cam had just lit up when Talay and Mutt unexpectedly walked in, causing her to suppress her intentions. Seizing the opportunity, the second aunt announced that Cam would have to hand over all her work to the two, officially being stripped of her power from the leadership and transferred to another department. Finishing her words, she coldly told her to leave. Immediately after, Mutt immediately pulled Talay into a private room to question him, but not only did he not answer but he also launched a sharp counterattack, delving into Nali's mysterious disappearance, causing Mutt to angrily deny it. Talay only sternly warned Mutt to be careful, but he didn't pay any attention and left. Meanwhile, Cam went to her old uncle's house as a habit, but this time, the door slammed shut in front of her. He knew about her affair with Thap, and his attitude had changed 180 degrees. Even the will had been rewritten. At the same time, Mutt and Mr. Fa Sin went to the racetrack to relieve their frustration. This time they encountered a formidable opponent. After easily winning, Thap stepped out with the arrogance of someone superior, uttering sarcastic and provocative words, as a way to take revenge for Cam. Furious, Mr. Fa Sin went straight to Rin, but only received frightening calmness in return. She said she knew everything in advance. It was that very composure that made him boil with blood, because this matter had disrupted his family. Unable to talk further, he coldly declared that he would handle Durut himself. As soon as he left, Rin frantically called to report the news to the second aunt. At Thap's house, Cam questioned him about why their love affair had been revealed. Thap remained calm, believing that now they didn't need to hide anymore and promising to protect her at all costs. That promise made Cam even more resentful, tears of injustice flowing as she realized she had lost almost everything. Thap gently apologized, hugging her tightly to comfort her. In his arms, Cam gradually calmed down. A thin smile bloomed on her lips as she gave Thap a passionate kiss. At Mutt's house, the atmosphere was also not peaceful. The two father and son were secretly discussing Nali when the youngest aunt came out, trying to ask about it. Although she had expressed her willingness to help but was immediately rejected rudely. The coldness of Mutt and Nda made her feel like she was collapsing. In a moment of utter despair, she reached for the secret phone that was hidden. As soon as the phone turned on, a call came. She hurriedly sneaked into the bathroom to answer the phone. On the other end of the line was Phi. He asked about her with concern. When she said that the person who released the video wasn't Rin, Phi suddenly fell silent, realizing that things were much more complicated than he had thought. Just then, Nda walked into the room to get the charger and accidentally heard the entire conversation. He was stunned, his eyes filled with anger and hurt. A fleeting moment of murder flashed in his mind and then disappeared, replaced by a rage that made him smash things and then leave. Hearing the loud noise, the youngest aunt panicked and ran out, only catching a glimpse of her son's lonely back. Her heart was in a mess. The next day, while talking with his assistant, Talay accidentally saw a suspicious video. Cam went to the temple to do good deeds for her mother, but left late at night. This detail raised a big question. At the same time at home, Rin found an old yearbook. Inside was a picture of a boy named Man that had been scratched out messily in a hateful way. She immediately took pictures of everything as evidence. Meanwhile, the clue brought Talay and his assistant to Cam's old school to find out about Man. From there, they stopped at a restaurant near the temple that Cam often went to and accidentally discovered her yearbook on the bookshelf. But just as they opened it, a piercing cry for help rang out from within. The two hurriedly ran in to search but didn't see any signs of danger. When they turned back, the yearbook had disappeared without a trace. The shop owner had secretly hidden it away, her eyes full of calculation. Leaving the restaurant empty-handed, Talay and Dika knew that this was no coincidence. As for Nda, he sought out Ki to pour out his heart. During the meal, every word, every gesture of Ki radiated deep concern and understanding, like a medicine soothing Nda's broken soul. In a moment of weakness, he emotionally hugged Ki, as if finding the only life raft. Everything seemed to be going as he planned. Today, Durut's construction was severely damaged. Mr. Fasin sat in the room with a calm face, not denying that he was the one behind it. When facing Durut, he launched a preemptive strike, revealing that Cam was Thap's lover, and then coldly issued a threatening warning before leaving. In the meeting room, Durut questioned Thap about his relationship with Cam. Thap calmly recounted the process of how they met, and expressed his hope that his father could stop this war. After a moment of silence, Durut suddenly agreed to follow his son's wishes, causing Thap to be stunned and then burst into joy. That evening, Mutt went to a bar to drink away his sorrows, and was unexpectedly attacked by a stranger, causing him to collapse on the spot. Outside the emergency room, the youngest aunt and her husband were arguing fiercely. The bitter exchange of words made Nda unbearable. He screamed in anger and then left, leaving the two adults in silence and deadlock. At the same time, Rin called the second aunt to report that Mutt had been attacked, fearing that Fa Sin had acted thoughtlessly and ruined the plan. She also didn't forget to remind the second aunt about Cam, because she always appeared at the right time and placed suspiciously. Nearby, Cam was talking on the phone with Thap, her voice intentionally loud and harsh as if for someone to hear. The second aunt approached, wanting to confirm her loyalty. Cam calmly declared that she would always stand on the side of Cam. The second aunt only smiled faintly, not saying anything more, and then quietly turned away, leaving only Cam with deep eyes full of calculation. The next morning, Cam's shadow stealthily sneaked into the second aunt's room, carefully searching for something. But before she could, the second aunt's figure suddenly appeared behind her. Without a trace of embarrassment, Cam quickly offered a prepared reason. She was only worried about medicine for her. The second aunt silently accepted it, but her voice lowered strangely, telling Cam to wait in the car outside. As soon as the door closed, she immediately went to the bathroom, quietly pouring all the pills into the toilet bowl, her eyes flashing with suspicion and high alert. Standing outside, Cam was silent, seemingly having anticipated this action. On the car, Cam's fingers were constantly swiping on the phone screen, texting someone mysterious, causing the second aunt to become even more suspicious. At noon, a call came. Cam hurriedly stood away to answer the phone. When she returned to the table, the waiter had just brought over a steaming hot pot. A suspicious coincidence caused the second aunt to believe that Cam was about to play a trick. Without a word of warning, she jumped up, making Cam surprised. The meal ended in silence. As soon as they got out, Cam immediately asked directly why the second aunt still suspected her of being the mole. She didn't answer, only coldly left. At that moment, according to plan, Cam's subordinates pushed a large box tumbling down, and she rushed to save the second aunt, creating a perfect false scene. At the same time, at Rin's house, while the whole family was discussing opening a new branch, the police suddenly arrived. They announced that someone in the house was related to a large-scale system of betting websites and virtual accounts. This shocking news quickly spread across the newspapers. Following the news, the second aunt quietly called someone. That night, Dao anxiously sought out Ki, demanding that he explain why the secret information had been leaked. Ki calmly denied it, blaming some hidden person who had leaked the news. Taking advantage of Dao's inattention, he secretly put sleeping pills in her glass of water. As the dizziness came on and Dao gradually fainted, his disgusting true face and gruesome ambitions were slowly revealed. The next morning, the second aunt gathered everyone, telling them to be more careful in their work, adhering to the 3 principles of honesty, courage and trust in family. That was the only strength that would help them get through this storm together. At the hospital, the second aunt asked Mutt about the attack. Mr. Fasin immediately interjected, demanding to handle it himself. The second aunt resolutely dismissed it, not allowing him to act rashly. Angrily, Mr. Fasin went outside, calling his subordinates to bring back the goods at all costs, while also demanding that the media be silenced. A moment later, the second aunt brought porridge to Cam, gently thanking her for saving her. She announced that she was restoring all the work to Cam and then left. As soon as the door closed, Cam immediately called someone, her eyes not hiding her triumph. Too saddened by family matters, Enda went to the shooting range. He vented his anger on the other players, causing him to be scolded by the coach. Annoyed, Enda went to Key's house, and this time, he gave Enda something to try that made him sink deep into hallucinations. As for Dao, after that horrific night, she was immersed in regret. Not knowing how to face her family, the police came to meet Rin, announcing that the signatures on the files were forged. Just then, the maid brought important information about the person who revealed the secret. When Dao returned, Rin painfully realized that her own daughter had forged the signatures. Too scared, Dao kept everything hidden, firmly asserting that Teacher Key was innocent. The whole family could only hug her to comfort her. After that, Talay led the police to investigate Key's company, hoping he would let Dao go. But Enda reacted harshly, arguing that Key hadn't done anything wrong. On the way back, Dao texted a warning to Enda that Key was an extremely dangerous person, but that message was ignored. Arriving at the room, Enda received a call asking about him from Key. In a daze, he confessed that he was in love with him. On the other end of the line, Key gave a sinister smile. At the same time, Dika provided Talay with some important information about Cam. Immediately, Talay along with his mother and the second aunt set out for the address that was said to be Cam's mother's house. But in another place, the familiar restaurant owner was bringing food into the room for Cam, and the person lying next to her was none other than Key. The two were putting on a perfect act in front of everyone. The restaurant owner just placed the food down and reminded them not to be too reckless. Cam only smiled confidently, believing that she had completely gained the second aunt's trust. Key nodded slightly. Their plan was to eliminate all the heirs, so that the second aunt would have no choice but to rely on Cam. She recalled the first day stepping into CM, the humiliation she had to swallow, and the way Key had approached the group. Also that she could grasp supreme power. All the incidents that occurred in the family were in their hands. They held hands tightly, together destroying everything. In the midst of that, Talay led people to rush in. In the chaotic scene, the second aunt and Rin secretly sneaked in to search but found nothing. Realizing the anomaly, the restaurant owner silently pressed the alarm, helping Cam and Key to hide in time, escaping by a hair's breadth. Realizing that the second aunt was only pretending to trust her, Cam immediately discussed a new plan. She agreed to let Key suffer a little, in exchange for the opportunity to put Talay in jail once again. At home, the assistant finally found the yearbook and discovered the real identity of Man, who was Key, the adopted son of the feng shui master. After piecing everything together, Rin affirmed that Cam and Key had secretly colluded to destroy CAM. Understanding that the other party had become vigilant, the second aunt immediately ordered the detective to continue investigating further. At Mutt's house, the whole family was shocked to see Nali appear on television. The youngest aunt was just about to speak when Fasin shouted loudly to stop her. Mutt immediately went to the hospital. Just arriving, he was surrounded by reporters. He ignored them, going straight into the hospital room. He placed before Nali 40 taels of gold to end everything, but she flatly refused, angrily shouting a price of 10 million baht or she would expose everything. The next day, while soaking in the ice pool at the monastery to calm his mind, Talay suddenly received a message. A video of his younger sister Dao being violated appeared, causing him to freeze. He immediately called her. Dao also collapsed when she learned that Key had betrayed her. She sought him out to question him, this time no longer softening before his sweet words. In the midst of the tension, Enda unexpectedly appeared. Dao recounted the entire truth, and the two together searched for the phone containing the video. When they found it, Dao completely collapsed. Meanwhile, Talay furiously rushed to find Key, but as soon as he entered, he was surprised to see him sprawled on the floor, no longer breathing. The crowd outside rushed in. Before they could understand what was going on, they quickly concluded that he was the murderer. At the police station, Talay hesitated for a long time, but finally had to submit Dao's video as evidence. Rin stood beside him, tears welling up, unable to believe the tragedy that was befalling her family. Arriving home, Rin burst into tears, hugging her daughter tightly, constantly saying sorry. Dao also painfully sobbed. Talay sat next to her, reassuring her that everyone would always be there for her. After that, Dao recounted the entire event. Rin listened and cried, but still pressed to ask if she had done it herself. Dao, with tear-filled eyes, tremblingly opened a small box. Inside was the murder weapon. Rin was stunned. The world seemed to collapse before her eyes. In another place, Cam was stunned when she read the news about Key's death. Her heart was in a mess. She frantically called him but only silence responded. In her most desperate moment, the second aunt came to find her. She said a few probing words and then asked Cam to order a wreath for the funeral before leaving. Returning to her room, when she was sure everything was true, Cam cried a bitter cry, then stopped abruptly. Her tears had dried, leaving only eyes full of hatred and cruelty. The atmosphere of mourning still shrouded. Rin proactively sought out the youngest aunt and her husband, with the faint hope of being able to untangle this mess together. She recounted that Dao and Nda were both present at the scene, information that stunned Mr. Fa Sin. But the real shock came when she added that the relationship between Nda and Ki was not just friendship. Hearing this, the youngest aunt burst into tears, begging her husband to save her son. After a moment of contemplation, Fa Sin also picked up the phone to call, asking someone to intervene. In Ki's cold room, Cam walked in like a ghost. Her heart wrenched when she looked back at each familiar corner, each past-colored keepsake. Her hand tremblingly touched the picture frame, and then suddenly stopped when she discovered a hidden camera. Her eyes flashed a cold light. She hurriedly pulled out the memory card. At the same time, Mr. Fa Sin's people found the bag containing the murder weapon that Nda had hidden. He immediately told everyone to leave, facing his son alone, forcing him to reveal the entire truth. And then, the terrible truth was gradually revealed. While Ki was struggling with Dao to regain the phone, Nda from behind rushed over, hitting hard and attacking continuously until Ki collapsed, dying on the spot. The entire cruel scene had been completely recorded by the hidden camera. Each frame that flashed past was like a knife stabbing straight into Cam's heart. She collapsed, but in her tear-filled eyes was a fire of hatred that flared up fiercely. On the other side, when hearing his son's full confession, Mr. Fa Sin went crazy, rushing to beat Nda black and blue, despite the hopeless crying and begging from the youngest aunt outside. The next day, Talay proactively arranged to meet Thap, deciding to play a hand face-up. He frankly said that Thap was just a pawn in Cam's hands, but Thap stubbornly didn't believe him, still trying to protect the person he loved. Talay continued to launch a fatal blow, expressing suspicion that Cam's real lover wasn't Thap, but Ki himself. He advised Thap to verify it himself, because he himself wanted to know what the final truth was. That evening at Ki's funeral, the entire Siam family was present, becoming the focus of scrutiny from the media. All suspicious eyes were focused on Cam. Late at night, when the funeral had ended, Cam sat quietly crying before the altar. Rin unexpectedly appeared from the darkness, questioning her sternly. She declared that she knew the whole truth and threatened to put her in jail. But Cam still maintained a frightening calmness, even provoking back. Rin then called Thap over to witness the true face of the girl he loved. When only the two were left, Cam admitted that she had cooperated with his father, because they shared a common goal that Durut wanted to see Cam, while she simply wanted to destroy it. After pouring out all the bitter words and the resentment she had buried for so long, Thap's heart gradually softened. That night, in the intoxication of sorrow and calculation, Cam fell into Thap's arms. In another development, Mutt brought 10 million baht to give to Nali as required. He naively believed that money could silence greed. But he didn't expect that Nali had secretly recorded the entire conversation and immediately called to report to Durut, once again joining hands with the enemy. The next day, when Mutt was installing the computer for the children and turned it on, he froze. The screen showed a video of Nali crying miserably, along with the audio recording of their bargaining. In a fit of anger, he tried to rush out, but Talay stopped him in time, advising him to stay calm. This time Mutt listened. As for Nda, he was still immersed in the obsession with Ki's departure. Even if his mother brought food to comfort him, he just snapped and chased her out. While Mr. Fa Sin was frantically trying to find a solution, a video accidentally appeared on the screen like adding fuel to the fire. A scene of his wife having an affair with her lover. His anger flared up. He immediately rushed to the youngest aunt's room, where she was talking on the phone with Phi. He questioned her bluntly. After a few arguments, Mr. Fa Sin threatened in a hoarse voice that he would personally deal with Phi, despite his wife kneeling and begging in despair. Immediately afterwards, Phi was arrested by the police at his workplace on charges of being the one who killed Ki. When watching the news, Cam frowned slightly. Her eyes darkened. Her voice coldly rang out in the empty room. She wouldn't let them easily blame others. Arriving home, Mr. Fa Sin was immediately questioned by the whole family. He went crazy, shouting that everything he did was only to protect his son, and then left in a rage. Meanwhile, Cam brought the documents that were said to overthrow CM to meet Durut, her face shining with the confidence of a winner. Durut initially seemed very satisfied, but when the assistant opened the documents, his expression suddenly changed. He turned to question Cam. She looked in and fell silent. It turned out that the inside was completely empty. The truth was revealed from that night. Thap had secretly checked Cam's phone. He discovered all of her conspiracies. His eyes filled with utter disappointment. Searching deeper, he accidentally found the video of the murder. Too shocked, he rummaged through Cam's belongings and found the memory card. Back in the present, Cam was confused, not understanding what had happened, constantly being pressed by Durut. She was forced to admit that she was Thap's lover, and then desperately begged him to help get back the video. But Thap had brought it to Talay. He wanted everything to be decided fairly. To Talay's surprise, he calmly deleted the video, as a test to see if Talay could treat others fairly, and then quietly left. In the silent meeting room, Talay played the video for everyone to see. The youngest aunt panicked, kneeling down and begging Rin to delete it to protect Enda, but she resolutely refused, affirming that the children must face the consequences of their actions themselves. Talay also made it clear that this video was given by Thap, and the original belonged to Cam, who had colluded with Key to destroy everything. This time, the second aunt calmly requested to find more evidence to finish off Cam, while Talay left to find Mutt. When the room was left with only the three women, all the last defensive walls collapsed. The youngest aunt choked with emotion, confessing her affair with Phi, recounting the time she had been abused by her husband in the past without daring to tell the second aunt. She burst into tears because she felt inferior to Rin, because she thought that her husband had never forgotten his ex. The second aunt stepped forward, hugging her tightly. Both women advised her, if love had run out, to bravely let go. In another development in the race that day, Thap was determined to win against his father, to force him to keep his promise not to cooperate with Cam anymore. But Durut had cheated. Thap not only lost the race but was also scolded badly by his father. He dragged Thap into the room, demanding that he hand over the video. Durut was angry that the plan was about to succeed but was blocked, but Thap resolutely objected, bluntly declaring that he had deleted it already. He glared at his father, declaring that he would never accept cheating. Furious, Durut immediately called Cam, reporting that it was likely that the video was in the hands of the Cam family. The next morning, Cam went to Rin's house, but just arriving at the gate was blocked by Takan. Dao also stepped out, coldly announcing that her mother was busy in a meeting and couldn't receive guests. Only until Dom brought the documents did Cam leave. It turned out that this was Talay's arrangement. He had asked Dom to take care of his mother, while also being vigilant if Cam appeared. As soon as Cam's figure disappeared, Dom immediately called Rin, reporting that Cam was on her way to the second aunt's house, a move that surprised all three people on the other end of the line. At this time, the second aunt hurriedly went out to deal with it. Cam said she wanted to meet Rin and Talay to ask about something, but was flatly refused. The second aunt only vaguely replied that they had just discussed the upcoming 58th anniversary celebration of the company. She was about to turn back when Cam unexpectedly offered to play a Jenga game, her eyes full of meaning. At the same time, Nali was preparing to flee when she suddenly saw Mutt standing waiting. He questioned her hoarsely about her double-crossing action. Words flew back and forth, anger flared up. Mutt went crazy and strangled Nali. Just then, Talay managed to rush over, pulling him away, preventing a tragedy. Seizing the opportunity, Nali hurriedly got into the car and fled. On the way back, Mutt poured out all the anger he had suppressed for so long. Talay only listened quietly, and then reminded him to remember the third principle of the family. That saying was like a bucket of cold water, causing Mutt to only remain silent. His eyes filled with helplessness. Talay took Mutt to the monastery where he used to practice. Before Talay's sincere words and Mutt's apologetic attitude, the master agreed to let him stay. At home, Rin told the youngest aunt about Mutt's situation. The youngest aunt wondered how she was able to overcome all the events in the past. Rin only smiled, saying that it was because she always thought of her children that she was able to stand firm until today. That saying made the youngest aunt even more confused. Everything was happening so quickly, she was worried that Enda would also be abandoned by the second aunt. Rin sincerely advised her to let Enda surrender. That was the only way for his soul to be at peace. Standing upstairs, Enda had heard everything. He quietly returned to his room, looking back at the photos taken with Key. The sweet memories of the past now felt like shards cutting into his heart, causing him pain. The next day, when the news again stirred up recent events, Dao hurried in to turn it off, not wanting Phi's name to be dragged into this mess. Rin gently hugged her daughter, comforting her and advising Dao to surrender, because she was also a victim. In another place, Enda had made a decision. He decided to take a leave of absence from school to surrender, his eyes resolute as if he had shed all burdens. The youngest aunt was moved, bursting into tears and hugging her son tightly. But Enda's eyes at this time had completely changed. Meanwhile, Cam went to the temple to pay respects to her mother and Key. Thap unexpectedly appeared beside her, bringing a wreath. He advised her to stop, promising that from now on he would take care of her. That promise made Cam laugh loudly, a laugh full of bitterness and sarcasm for his naivety. Then in a fit of suppressed rage, she poured out all her suffering and her bitter past. Thap could only hug her tightly, gently comforting her and unexpectedly proposing marriage. But Cam coldly refused, turning and leaving without a word of farewell. Meanwhile, at the CAM meeting room, the atmosphere was as tense as a taut string. The second aunt and Mr. Fawson argued fiercely. The second aunt demanded that he divorce the youngest aunt, but he resolutely refused and then stormed off. In another place, Cam called Dorut, her voice as cold as ice, affirming that she would destroy CM at all costs. But immediately after, a harsh truth came crashing down. She discovered that she was pregnant. Anger and despair surged. Cam screamed and then furiously punched her stomach. The atmosphere in the house at this time was suffocatingly stuffy. The second aunt ordered all the phones to be collected to prevent information from being leaked. Suddenly, Cam appeared. Immediately afterwards, Talay and Mud also arrived just in time. The second aunt coldly asked Cam to leave. She only smiled lightly and then obediently walked away, but her eyes were still full of calculation. Turning back to the meeting table, the second aunt solemnly asked Mutt to surrender, teaching him again about the two words responsibility. She also gave the youngest aunt full power to decide on the divorce, making the atmosphere even heavier. No one knew outside Cam had secretly recorded the entire meeting, the corner of her mouth revealing a triumphant smile. As for Dow, she was extremely panicked, bursting into tears. The second aunt gently comforted her, and then turned to advise Nda. He was about to say something but was brushed off by his father, causing the resentment in his heart to surge. The youngest aunt and her husband exchanged words again, and that was like the last straw. Nda jumped up, firing a shot into the air, his eyes full of hatred. Mutt shouted loudly, causing Nda to become even more deranged. He rushed forward, grabbing Mutt's head and throwing him to the floor. When Mr. Fawson spoke up, he was also shot in the hand. Talay slowly approached, trying to persuade him, and then taking advantage of Nda's carelessness, he snatched the gun. Mutt seized the opportunity, rushing to beat him black and blue. After being pulled apart by everyone, Nda gradually calmed down in his mother's comforting arms and the advice of Talay and Dow. The house was flooded with chaos and choked sobs. Talay reported to the second aunt that Mutt had run away. The second aunt could only sigh, immediately calling to find evidence to drive Cam out of CAM as soon as possible. Outside, Cam walked around and then came to talk to Takan. But Takan, with calmness and understanding of the situation, skillfully responded and maintained a clear distance. Cam only made a sarcastic remark and then turned and left. At the police station, Dow choked with emotion, confessing the whole truth. Tears rolled down her face as she tremblingly handed over to the police the video recording the horrific moment she had experienced. As for Nda, he completely lost control, screaming, smashing things in a panic, forcing the police to use force to restrain him. Seeing her son being suppressed, the youngest aunt could only burst into tears in despair. At the house, the old uncle had just stepped out after a fiery argument with the second aunt when he ran into Cam waiting. Without a word, she knelt down, begging for forgiveness. But responding to her was only an eye that had understood everything. With a calm and chilling voice, he said that he would never let someone like her become the leader of CAM, then smiled faintly, turning and leaving Cam with humiliation. In the hospital room, Nda was being restrained, shouting unconsciously. Standing outside, the youngest aunt looked at her son. Her heart-wrenched tears just continued to fall. Just then, Phi appeared, his eyes also filled with pity when witnessing that painful scene. Meanwhile, at the house, the second aunt was preparing to go for a massage when a sense of unease suddenly arose. She hurriedly checked the security cameras and panicked when she discovered that they had been disabled. Without a second of hesitation, she immediately called the police. When she returned, the scene before her made her freeze. Cam was openly rummaging through documents in her office. She rushed in to question her, but Cam shamelessly argued. Unable to restrain herself any longer, the second aunt slapped her across the face. At this time, Cam revealed her true face. She sneered and then began to recount all the crimes she had committed. The sound of police sirens grew closer. The two rushed into a fierce struggle for the document. When the police rushed in, the second aunt was lying motionless at the foot of the stairs, blood smeared on the floor. The hospital waiting room was immersed in a heavy, stuffy atmosphere. Everyone was anxious, suspecting the second aunt's accident was related to Cam. When she appeared, all suspicious eyes immediately turned to her. But just then, Thap walked in, speaking up to give her an alibi. In another place, Dorut had quickly obtained all the evidence and destroyed it, helping Cam erase all traces. At this time, Cam sat next to Thap, pretending to be calm, giving a gentle smile while Thap still naively believed in the girl he loved. Suddenly, a call came, and that was the opportunity Cam was waiting for. She immediately took the opportunity to delete all the documents related to her dark past. At the shareholder meeting, Rin suggested postponing the anniversary celebration because the second aunt was still unconscious, but the old uncle flatly refused, and Cam immediately added some meaningful words. Talay disagreed, proposed a vote and quickly received 4 votes in favor. Just when it seemed like he had won, Cam unexpectedly pulled out a power of attorney from the second aunt, stunning the entire meeting room. Everyone objected fiercely, but the old uncle approved it and then coldly left. The situation became extremely tense. Everyone was afraid that Cam would take this opportunity to sell off CAM to a competitor. Immediately after, Cam convened an emergency meeting for tomorrow, putting the entire family on the defensive. Rin hurriedly sought out the old uncle for help, but he coldly refused. Even when Cam sought him out requesting him to stand on her side, he still resolutely refused. Cam then revealed her cards, exposing his secrets, uttering threats and haughty sarcasm. At the hospital, Mutt disguised himself as a janitor, quietly visiting the second aunt. He knelt down, sincerely apologizing to her in tears. Unexpectedly, Talay appeared. He told Mutt about the second aunt's condition and advised him to surrender. Just then the nurse walked in. Mutt hurriedly left. Very soon after, the final fateful meeting took place. Cam brazenly proposed that she would temporarily hold the position of chairman in place of the second aunt. Although everyone was dissatisfied, most of the shareholders had been bought off by her beforehand. As a result, Cam was elected, sitting proudly on the chairman's seat. Immediately afterwards, she coldly requested the dismissal of the youngest aunt, Rin, and Talay as well. The decision was passed in utter anger by everyone. The youngest aunt struggled to resist fiercely, but was dragged out of the meeting room by security. Meanwhile, Mutt was on his way with his father fleeing to the border when he unexpectedly received a message from Cam. He was silent for a few seconds and then decided to get out of the car, turning back, his eyes full of determination. At this time at CAM, Cam very smugly walked into the chairman's room. She replaced the new nameplate, sat on the powerful chair of the second aunt, giving a satisfied smile, her eyes sparkling with the dominance she had always craved. In the hospital, the second aunt's condition began to improve. This news quickly reached Cam's ears. She immediately called Durut, urging the sale of CAM as soon as possible. But they didn't expect that the entire conversation had been secretly recorded by Mutt. When they discovered that, both Cam and Durut couldn't hide their worry. As for Talay, he sought out Thap, criticizing him for blindly covering for Cam. While the two were exchanging words, Durut appeared, uttering sarcastic words and then ordering his subordinates to chase Talay out. When leaving, Talay suddenly recognized that Durut's henchman had an artificial arm. A hint of suspicion flashed. He hurriedly turned on his camera, believing that he was related to the departure of his father and brother. In the evening, Rin reviewed the power of attorney and realized that Cam may have used the second aunt's pen to forge the signature. She hurriedly went to find her daughter to ask her to check. Just then Talay hurriedly walked in, asking about a person named Lai, causing her to be stunned. Meanwhile, Mutt along with his father secretly sneaked back home. The whole family was having dinner when Rin and Talay unexpectedly arrived. They revealed that Durut had secretly met Mr. Lai, who was directly involved in the CAM deal. Mutt stepped out, confirming that Mr. Lai was the one who would be buying the group on behalf of Durut. Suddenly, Cam led the police to rush in with a warrant, demanding to arrest Mutt and search the entire house. But Mutt quickly managed to escape. Cam only made a few sarcastic remarks and then left, leaving the youngest aunt and her husband with extreme anger. As soon as the door closed, the four of them looked at each other, realizing that they had to act immediately. Everyone split up to meet the shareholders but were refused. Soon after, a message announcing the shareholder meeting regarding the sale of CAM was sent out. In the midst of despair, the old uncle called Rin, suggesting she ask the court to issue a temporary protection order. For the first time, the entire CAM family joined forces to protect the family's business. In another development, Durut's henchman was surrounded by the police. He resisted fiercely but was subdued by Talay's assistance. At the station, he remained completely silent. Meanwhile, Enda fell into a state of severe depression. His parents argued right in front of the doctor. After the doctor's advice, the two went to visit their son. But when they just reached out their hands, Enda fearfully backed away. That image was like a knife piercing Mr. Fasin's heart, causing him to regret it extremely. He tremblingly called, apologizing sincerely to his son for the first time, hoping he would recover soon. That day, Mutt along with his father went to the police station to surrender. It wasn't a surrender, but a move to buy time before the fateful shareholder meeting. Seeing them, Cam only smiled contemptuously, uttered a few mocking words to Talay and then turned and left. In the meeting room, the atmosphere was as heavy as lead. Cam bluntly proposed selling off CAM and demanded a vote. Tension rose to its peak. The moment the results had just been passed, the door opened. Rin walked in with the court's restraining order, causing Cam to be stunned and then angry. The two sides exchanged fierce words. Afterwards, all three stood before the second aunt's hospital bed, discussing the next step. Unexpectedly, Mutt and his father walked in, causing everyone to be amazed. Mutt knelt down beside the bed, choking with emotion as he poured out all his feelings. And then a miracle happened. The second aunt's hand twitched slightly, and then her eyes slowly opened, causing the entire room to explode with emotion. At the same time, Cam was called to meet Dorette privately. Without a word of preamble, he coldly forced her to take a pregnancy test on the spot. When the test showed 2 lines, he still uttered sarcasm and ridicule. Despite Cam affirming that her love for Thap was real, she looked straight into his eyes, declaring that she was carrying his child, the future heir of both groups, a statement that made Dorette speechless. The entire conversation had been transmitted directly to Thap through the phone. When stepping out of the elevator, Cam ran into Thap. Without saying a word, she took out the ring, proposing to him. Thap put the ring on her finger and hugged the girl he loved tightly. In the office, Talay sat contemplating, his mind as tense as a taut string. After recalling the teachings of the master, his eyes became resolute. He decided to play a bold game. He had someone in prison pick a fight, provoking Dorette's henchmen. Under pressure and fear, finally he confessed the whole truth. He admitted that, when the plane carrying Chan and his father crashed, he had received money to conceal information from air traffic control. And the real mastermind behind it all, none other than Dorette. Because he couldn't buy the prime land, Dorette harbored resentment, secretly planning to stop that fateful flight. He had set up a play, secretly putting drugs into the pilot's water, causing the plane to lose control and crash. When questioned by the police, he testified that the source of information about the flight was provided by Cam. Hearing this, Rin and Talay were silent. Talay angrily left, but Rin managed to pull him back, advising him to stay calm for the big picture. Meanwhile, Cam went to the hospital, pretending to ask about the second aunt's condition. The youngest aunt angrily rushed to hit her but was stopped by Rin. The doctor came out, announcing that the second aunt had lung cancer and a weakened immune system, just as Cam had arranged. Immediately after, she called Dorette to report that the second aunt was about to pass away. But she didn't expect that Dorette's son had accidentally overheard the entire conversation. He angrily rushed in to question his father. Dorette only coldly replied that when everything was over, he should break up with Cam. In another place, Rin and Talay went to the company and discovered that the restraining order had been revoked. At the same time, Cam had openly signed off on selling all of CAM. The two rushed into the meeting room, confronting Cam in a rage. Cam shamelessly claimed that this was just a strategic move. Talay couldn't restrain his anger, but Rin stopped him, advising him to be patient. Immediately afterwards, Talay contacted Thap, and he admitted the truth, promising to help them stop this transfer. The 58th anniversary of CAM finally arrived. While the whole family was immersed in anxiety, Dorette held his head high triumphantly. Thap made an excuse to go to the bathroom, but Dorette had anticipated his intention. He dragged him into a private room, confiscated all the evidence and imprisoned him. When Talay called, Dorette grabbed the phone, cutting off all contact. Knowing the plan had failed, Talay quickly called Mutt to implement the contingency plan. On stage, Cam confidently announced that the new chairman of CAM was Dorette. But just then a recording rang out in the hall, exposing the entire conspiracy of her and Dorette. Everyone was stunned as the second aunt sat in a wheelchair, slowly moving in. She sternly announced all the crimes of the two, affirming that all transactions carried out by Cam were invalid. Reporters immediately surrounded the two criminals. Dorette tried to run but was stopped by Talay. Cam was confused, not understanding why the second aunt had obtained the evidence. Turned out that, on the day Mutt came to the hospital, the second aunt had revealed to him about the USB containing the recording, which was cleverly hidden inside the Jenga game. When all the conspiracies were exposed, Dorette angrily roared, cursing Cam as stupid. Without the slightest bit of weakness, Cam immediately retorted, arguing that he was even more stupid than she was many times over. The two who used to be close allies now turned to tear each other apart fiercely right in front of everyone, revealing their ugly true faces behind the mask of power and lies. Even when cornered, Dorette still kept an arrogant look, challenging the second aunt. But she just calmly replied that even though her family was full of old people, women and children, they never abandoned each other. She looked straight into his eyes, saying that he never understood the true value of the word family. In the midst of the atmosphere as tense as a string, a group of reporters unexpectedly rushed in. Lenses and microphones all pointed towards them. The second aunt immediately raised her voice, clearly declaring that CAM would never fall into the hands of two traitors. Finishing her words, she turned sharply towards Cam, her eyes sharp and cold with vigilance, then let out a warning like a sweeping knife that she should never dream of seizing the family fortune when she was just the child of a mistress. Immediately after, the space was in chaos due to the appearance of the police. They read the arrest warrant for Mr. Dorette and Cam with a series of charges, including taking the lives of others, forging documents, fraud, and being directly related to the passing of Talay's father and brother. In that chaotic moment, Dorette's subordinate immediately cut the entire power system, causing the whole conference center to sink into pitch darkness. Taking advantage of the situation, Cam and Durut found a way to escape through the back door. Outside, the police had tightened the circle. Thap heard the news that his father and Cam might have been arrested, his heart burning like fire, and hurriedly rushed down to the conference floor. When Durut just set foot in the basement parking lot, the police rushed in. He panicked and turned back to find another way, but it was too late. The youngest aunt's husband and son had blocked every escape route. He was subdued and escorted straight to the station. Meanwhile, Cam quietly returned to the mall, changed into different clothes and wore a hat to hide her identity. Thap ran everywhere looking for her in despair. When he called, Cam unexpectedly appeared in front of him, rushed into his arms and burst into sobs, saying that she was too scared and didn't know what to do. Thap hurriedly helped her walk towards the exit, where the police were waiting. But right at that moment, Cam unexpectedly looked up, looking at him with a gaze so cold it was creepy. She delivered a slap to Thap that was so hard it seemed to tear the air. Her voice choked in pain as she asked if the affection he had for her was truly love. Thap could only reply that he never had any intention of abandoning her and their child. But that explanation could not soothe the despair building up in Cam's heart. She struggled, screamed and cried, while Thap affirmed that this was the only path she could choose right now. And then when the police rushed in a moment of chaos, Cam unexpectedly rushed straight towards the railing and threw herself down. Her scream rang out, tearing the hearts of the whole corridor. Thap collapsed, hugging Cam's gradually cooling body, unable to believe the tragedy that had just happened right before his eyes. Inside, the police also ordered the arrest of the female reporter for defamation and spreading false news. The CAM family stood there, quietly watching Durut being escorted away. In each person's heart was a feeling of satisfaction after a long chain of gloomy days. At the police station, Durut still stubbornly denied the crime. But as soon as he finished speaking, the police officer received an urgent call, ordering his release. Durut's lawyer appeared, quickly taking him outside to everyone's amazement. But the joy was short-lived. Thap was already waiting. He coldly presented evidence proving his father intended to flee and requested the police to cancel the bail. He also declared that he would cooperate with the investigation to clarify everything. Durut angrily questioned why his son betrayed him, but Thap only calmly replied that he did so to give his father a chance to rebuild his life, not wanting to see him continue to sink deeper into the path of sin. The police immediately escorted Durut onto the car under everyone's dazed gaze. In the detention center, Cam was officially prosecuted with a series of charges. Having lost her unborn child, she now had to face accusations of taking another person's life, along with forging documents. When the 50-year prison sentence was announced, every last hope inside her seemed to crumble, leaving behind a cold, empty space that couldn't be filled. Unable to stand the bottled-up despair, Cam quietly walked to the iron bars and ended her own life. On the cold floor, people found the last words she left behind, affirming that she herself used to be a person of CAM, a confession that was haunting to the extreme. At the Heaven Plaza Company, Thap returned to the management position, continuing to carry the career his father left behind, with the thorny road ahead. On the other side, and to return to the warm arms of his family. He emotionally asked his father to let his mother be free, to live the rest of her life. After a moment of silence, Mr. Fossen quietly walked over, hugged his son, accepting to let go of the painful past to look toward a new future. After so many storms, peaceful days finally returned to the CAM family. Justice was served, and the court confirmed that Mutt and Fossen were actually victims in Nalei's scheme. Thanks to their sincere attitude and cooperation with the investigation, both had their sentences reduced to 5 years in prison. And Dao, after the mistakes of their youth, also received leniency with suspended sentences. When everything had settled down, the second aunt organized a grand meeting, where she officially handed over the power and responsibility of managing CAM to the successor she trusted the most. The person who had proved his ability and bravery through the storm, Talay. Standing before the entire company, Talay gave a deep thank you, his voice steady but unable to hide his emotion. He promised to steer the ship of CAM through every challenge, amidst thunderous applause like an affirmation of a promising new era. After the ceremony, Dao and Dika brought cake to serve everyone. Watching Dika's skillful gestures and warm smile, Rin couldn't help but smile with satisfaction, thinking to herself that this girl was truly lovable. The next day, she invited Dika to the mall and gave her a small task as a final test. When Dika left, Talay was standing on the floor above, quietly watching her figure. When she returned, Dika's dedication and sense of responsibility were clearly shown in the smallest details. She gently pulled a fountain pen out of her pocket, respectfully handed it back to her, and bowed to ask for permission to leave. Just then, the second aunt and Talay walked over together. The four of them looked at each other, all smiling with joy and understanding. Talay gently held Dika's hand, turned back to look at Rin and the second aunt, his eyes filled with gratitude. The second aunt whispered that a good leader always needs a solid support system, one that is both smart and brave. After speaking, she quietly left, leaving room for the younger generation. Guys, after all, the true heir is not the one who holds the bloodline or business power, but the one who can continue and promote the sacred values that the whole family has cultivated together: love, honesty, and a sense of responsibility. It is those very things that created the immortal strength of Siam, an empire that not only has fame and money, but is also a place where the heirs will never let go of each other's hands, walking together side by side, lasting forever. The movie ends here. Don't forget to hit like, comment, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next exciting movies.